If you're new to our channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.
The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show is heard on WNOV 860 AM and W293CX 106.5 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, WWDB 860 AM in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and WAAM 1600 Ann Arbor, Michigan.
So we're going to talk about starting seeds indoors, and to do this right, there are techniques in which we need to follow. When we start seeds indoors, this segment is sponsored by Happy Leaf LED.
Happy Leaf LED is Happy Leaf LED is probably made in the USA, a grow light for beginners or advanced indoor gardeners. They have a universal LED recipe that means you can just turn it on and watch your leafy greens, herbs, vegetables, any plant really grow and thrive. It's the anywhere, anytime garden. A professional grade grow light with a home gardener's affordability. No fans, no motors, just plug in and grow. For more information, you can visit happyleafled.com.
So with that being said, the Happy Leaf LED is a great tool. We'll talk about growing lights in a moment when we talk about starting seeds indoors. And we want to get into the seed starting aspect of it, but we want to start the seeds off right indoors, Holly. And to do this, we want to have what?
Well, we want to have, first of all, you want to make sure that you are starting the seeds indoors at the right time. That's important.
Right, like onions 10 to 12 weeks, peppers 10 to 12 weeks before your last average frost date, tomatoes 6 to 8 weeks. So there's a lot of charts online in which you can look at.
So, for example, let's talk about onion seeds and leeks, which we just started 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
And you could have started them a little bit sooner, but the nice thing about starting your onion seeds indoors is that if you seed them and seed them heavy, then you'll have a lot of onions to grow.
And there's three different, you just can't just go get onion seeds and start them.
No.
There's a certain category in which you need to know based on your geographical area.
That's correct, Joey. So what you want to do is you want to figure out where you are in the United States. And if you are north of the central portion of the United States, so kind of draw a line along where like Springfield, Illinois is. Higher than that, you are going to grow short day onions. Or long day onions, long day onions. So if you're north, long day.
Yeah, northern portions of the United States.
In the middle portion, you're going to grow neutral day or midday. And if you're in the south, you're going to grow short day. And that might not seem right, but it's because the people in the north have longer days during the summer.
And if you try to grow a long day in a short day area or short day in a long day, you will get an onion. You just may not get a whole lot of bulb development on that onion. So let's talk about the basic understanding of starting seeds indoors correctly here by first the material in which we're starting our seeds in.
Yeah, you also want to make sure you're starting fresh seeds because seeds lose 10% of their germination every year. So if you have seeds that are 5 years old, you're only going to get probably about 50% germination.
And then, you don't want to throw them out, but double, triple them up. If you typically put one tomato seed in a hole, for example, or a seed cup or whatever, put 2 or 3 to likely increase your chances of getting at least one to germinate. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about potting soil because we get this question.
Well, we're going to talk about containers.
Let's talk about containers first. Okay.
So a lot of times on Pinterest you'll see this, start your seeds in an egg carton, a little eggshell, or start your seeds in
a lemon skin. Ice cream cone.
Ice cream cone. That's cute. It's really cute. Makes cute little blog pictures, but it's not practical because your seed eventually is going to grow, and that means its root system is going to grow, and you're basically cutting its root system off.
Right. It's going to grow for about 3 days, run out of moisture. You're going to forget to water, and it's going to die. So with anything that we're starting indoors, the more volume of material you are planting in, the longer that plant can survive when you forget to or not water.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you want to, that's one thing, is that you want to make sure that you have enough space for the plant to grow, that you have so that it has some water or moisture. And also, if you have to transplant it, maybe you don't want to transplant that plant. So maybe you do want to start it in a larger container.
That's right. So let's talk about the materials. One, we all see the expandable peat pellets that people choose to use. You put water in them, they expand like a sponge. That's fine, that's great. Here's the downside to it. It's convenient. One, at the time of planting, you have to remove the netting because the netting doesn't biodegrade as they indicate that it should. Secondly, there's no nutrient value in that peat pellet. It's peat moss. So at some point, about 3 to 4 weeks into your plant germination, things are looking good, and then things start going downwards. That's because the plant has used up all the natural nutrient nutrient value that has been stored in the seed coat that nature has designed. And now it's looking for nutrients. And just because you're watering it doesn't mean that it's getting the nutrient value that it's required to develop and grow correctly. You need to supplement, if you're using peat pellets, with an organic or inorganic liquid fertilizer at about a quarter of the strength. We can get around this if we use a potting mix that contains some type of slow-release fertilizer.
So you want some good potting soil, and you might ask, what is good potting soil? How do you know if it's good potting soil? If I go to my local drugstore and I find some potting soil, is that good? Do I have to go to the garden center and buy the expensive stuff? What's the difference? Well, first of all, what you want to look for in good potting soil is something like slow-release fertilizer. You can fertilize your own seedlings, that's fine, but the benefit of the slow-release fertilizer is so that you don't have to think about that.
Yeah, less effort, more production is what we're looking for. So what are some ingredients, when we flip the bag over, what are we looking for? What is the key things that we should find inside of a bag of potting mix?
So that one is the slow release fertilizer. Oh. The other is peat moss or cocoa core. And what that is it just kind of adds to the soil, increases drainage.
It holds moisture.
Holds moisture, but it also increases proper drainage as well.
No, that's perlite and vermiculite.
Right, well, that too.
Yeah.
And then the perlite and vermiculite is for the drainage, makes your soil a bit fluffier. And then organic matter, so you could do plant-based, animal-based compost.
So that's what you're looking for. You want to avoid a heavy amount of pine bark or wood chip type of items in that bag because they're not fully broke down. They're going to cause a lot of air gaps. They're not going to have nutrient value or water retention capabilities in that.
So when we're talking about plant-based or animal-based compost, it could be anything from leaves to just some sort of plant-based compost, like you would have your own plant-based compost. Animal-based sometimes is like chicken manure, sometimes even like turkey manure. So what are
which is fine. Those manures are fine if they are derived from an organic source. A lot of these companies will just go to a mega farm, buy that manure, the turkey or chicken droppings that have been fed with GMO crops and been filled with pesticides or medication and all this other stuff that's not good. So that's what you want to look for in your potting soil. Once we've established the type of potting soil, and here's what with the potting soil, you see the variations in pricing at the garden center. You pay for what you get. If you see a bag on sale for $1.95, there's a reason why it's $1.95 because it's El Cheapo, poor material in it, a lot of filler, sand-like material that doesn't retain moisture or hold any nutrient value whatsoever. And we have purchased, in years past, materials like that, and we would have had more success growing in sand because the water just permeates through it so quickly. There's no retention of any type of, it really is even a poor medium to even grow in.
Right, so that's definitely something you want to think about.
Let's talk about watering since we're talking about water retention and how often.
Sure, so watering is something that you can definitely overdo and underdo, especially with your seedlings, because you have different size containers. Maybe it depends on the dryness of your home, where you're growing your seeds, things like that, what the humidity level is. So one thing you want to do is we do wet paper towel on the top of our seedling plants when we first start them.
Prior to the germination.
Prior to the germination. And that gives you an advantage because you can then spritz that wet paper towel to help keep the top of the container where the soil top is, the surface, moist. Otherwise, we do a lot of bottom watering.
Bottom watering is where you let the container sit in a tray, water, and the water naturally wicks up into the container. If your container, you have to have a container that has holes. We use root maker grow trays that has holes in the bottom, and they air prune the root so you don't get that wraparound issue. And it wicks the water up naturally, so when you're not watering from the top and disrupting or disturbing or splattering soil on the plants themselves. So you can do that. The proper time of watering is when the container is damp or almost dry. You'll see this more readily visible whenever the plants are growing versus before they germinate. As they're growing, you'll see all of a sudden they get real floppy and they nearly fall over because they're dehydrated. We want to water prior to that. And we want to water, if we bottom water, we want to water and allow it to wick up. not so much where the plants are stagnantly setting in water. It's not a swamp or a bog. We want to water, hydrate the soil, and then remove the excess water that is coming off of that's in the tray. Because if you let them set in water, it just does not work. It will kill the plant, because plants need a dry and wet cycle, as well as the oxygen in the soil is what these roots need as well. So let's finish up the segment here with where do we put our seedlings at?
Well, there's a lot of options. One is that you have to think about, they need light. So if you get a grow light, like a Happy Leaf LED, a lot of people do like a baker's rack type thing, because that way you can put the grow light at the top, let the baker's rack, because it has it's just basically made of wire or
metal shelving.
Yeah. So that light can go through. Otherwise, you do underneath some tables with the grow light. If you have a south-facing window or even an east or west-facing window, you can do that. You can put it in a basement.
People will say, well, what about, can I put it on top of the refrigerator? Well, yes, you can at the time of planting to keep the soil warm, because there's a lot of heat that comes off the back of the refrigerator. Here's what you want to remember, that the plants are up there, because you'll put them up there, they're out of sight, out of mind, you'll forget about them.
I mean, we got some like 3-year-old cereal on top of our fridge, I'm pretty sure. So,
you'll forget about it, and they'll dry out, they won't germinate because you forgot about them. But yeah, that's a good place. But yeah, south-facing window underneath a Happy Leaf LED. Do you need a heat mat in order to germinate your seeds?
No. You don't. Maybe for certain seeds like hot peppers or something, I think you do.
Well, if you're in an environment in which the ambient temperature is very cold, yes, like a garage or an unconditioned basement or unconditioned garage. If you're growing them in the corner of your bedroom, grow room, playroom, wherever, your house most likely is between 68 and 75 degrees. That warmth will go into the soil and allow the plants to germinate at a timely fashion. That you won't need any additional heat for that. So that's how we can get our seedlings started in the grow. Started indoors off right. Now, if you're starting your seeds, if you don't want to start your seeds, you don't have to start your seeds. You can go ahead and purchase them at your local garden center, and you don't have to worry about that. They're already done for you. One thing we'll touch on real briefly before we go to break is, and we'll touch on this later on in the season, but when it's time to take them outside, we're going to plant them. You can't just take them right outside. You have to go through what is called a hardening off process.
Okay.
Hardening off process.
Hardening off is basically where you take when you take your seeds outside to plant them, you don't want to just put them directly in the ground. That you don't want to bring them from their nice comfy home into the elements. So what you do is every day for about a week before you're going to put them outside is you acclimate them to the temperature. And you do this at the peak of the day, right?
Yes.
And if you
when adequate, if you can.
If you can't, you could just do it right when you get home from work, and you just increase the time. So you start with like an hour, and then throughout the week you just add more time, eventually moving to overnight.
Absolutely. And then by that time, within a week's period, they will be able to stay outside. You have to do this according to the time of year, and make sure you look at the long-range forecast, and make sure that works for the time. You just don't want to set them out if it's going to be 35 degrees.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.